Feel like a pimp when this. Just needed a cigar. Sleepwalking instance.
Sleep is a state of great possibility. Your desires
So
play
loud.
right before your eyes in the midst of a dream, or your greatest fears culminating in a nightmare. But luckily, in reality, we are safely tucked into our beds. Or are we?
We are not. Like I had a dream where the moon turned into black. Like it turned black and went into weird shapes inside of it. Like triangle shapes. Then I knew at that time the apocalypse came. It went under. It didn't go over like normal nightness. It just went under again. Like it was about to go over again. You know what I mean, do you? You should know. Joe Bart's live.
From the outside, 23-year-old Kenneth Park seemed to have it all. A loving wife, a newborn daughter, and a secure job. But behind the facade was a man riddled with anxiety and insomnia, fueled by an addiction to gambling. He fed his addiction with his family's savings and by stealing $30,000 from his employer. But when the company found out in March of 1987, Kenneth was fired, leaving him in debt, facing criminal charges, and unemployed. Then everything fell apart. On May 20...
He could be sleepwalking. He can pull out that card. Say, I slept in my office and I just fell asleep. And I woke up on a park bench with money. I was holding cash. I don't know why.
23rd, 1987, Kenneth got up in the middle of the night and drove 14 miles to his in-laws' house. Once there, he let himself in and repeatedly beat his mother-in-law on the head with a tire iron.
I don't think that's true, to be honest. I don't think he was sleepwalking. Because driving takes a lot of mind work to do. I don't drive myself, but it takes a lot of mind work.
Before stabbing her multiple times with a kitchen knife, Kenneth then beat his father-in-law, Dennis, into unconsciousness. It wasn't until he got back into his car that he woke up. Panicking at the sight of blood, he drove himself to the police station where stunned authorities listened to Kenneth hysterically confess that he just killed his in-laws while sleepwalking. Police noticed Kenneth didn't seem to be feeling any physical pain from the severed tendons in his hands, a side effect of extreme stress or shock, but also of sleepwalking. Kenneth was put through several sleep and
Yeah, but you wake up from that though. You'll wake up from that. Getting your hand fucking cut up. When he's sleepwalking, he don't have any shock.
Psychological tests, and the results indicated he suffered from parasomnia, a sleep disorder characterized by abnormal behaviors, movements, and thoughts. Coupled with his lack of pain just after the attacks, the doctors determined he was sleepwalking throughout the savage murder, and he was acquitted of all charges in 1989. A middle-aged couple in Sydney, Australia believed they had a happy marriage. They had been married many years and had remained faithful throughout their entire partnership. The husband long ago learned how to cope with his wife's quirks, her sleep-talking.
I think I heard this before. A guy thought there was an intruder in their van, but it was his wife. But he killed his wife by accident because he thought he was an intruder.
In her occasional spells of sleepwalking. But then he began finding used condoms in the house upon waking, and over time, as more appeared, he grew suspicious. One morning, the man woke to find his wife was not in bed, and when he went searching for her, he...
That was smell though. Used condoms, if it's used, does lube smell over time? It can. It can smell.
He found her having sex with a stranger, but she was completely asleep. Upon awaking, the woman had no recollection of her late-night trysts, but thinking back to when the mysterious condoms first started appearing, the couple realized she'd been seducing strangers in her sleep for months. Doctors did an in-depth clinical analysis, and the test results convinced the experts that the wife had sexsomnia, a condition in which a person commits sexual acts in their sleep. They believe stress and her history of sleepwalking also contributed, but the woman made a full recovery through psychiatric counseling, and the couple returned to their peaceful marriage.
So she was having a go at herself in the middle of the night. Do you not wonder if a bed wet or a bit soggy.
One might think alcohol would help insomnia sufferers get a better night's rest, but for chronic sleepwalker Jules Lowe, alcohol made things much, much worse. Following the death of his stepmother, Jules got together with his brother and his father, Eddie Lowe, for a night of drinking and reminiscing. But it wasn't until after they all went to sleep that things turned ugly. Jules got out of bed and attacked his father, kicking, stomping, and punching the elderly man until he was lifeless. Eddie suffered a total of 90 injuries, including a broken nose, 12 rib fractures, and a brain hemorrhage. But Jules remembered nothing of the murder and revealed his deeply troubled history with sleepwalking and alcohol. Jules was put through what was referred to as the most detailed scientific test in British legal history to uncover his sleep patterns and was ultimately found not guilty.
See a bit of shit out of him. That's what I'm saying. It could be an excuse. It could be an excuse. How can you scientifically measure that? You like camera footage of him walking in his boxer shorts and a grey t-shirt.
Based on his sleepwalking defense, but believing he posed a threat to others, Jules was ordered to be confined indefinitely to a mental institution. In 1880s Paris, France, there was no better detective to call than 35-year-old Robert Ledru, who made a name for himself disbanding black magic cults and imprisoning a multitude of anarchists. In 1887, Robert was on assignment when local authorities told him he had a new priority, solving the murder of Andre Manet, who had been shot to death on the beach the night before. Right away, Robert noticed something odd about the killer's footprints in the sand. They were missing their big toe on the right foot. Robert himself also had no big toe on his right foot and remembered waking that morning to find his socks were wet. Stunned, Robert told police of his suspicions that he...
Very sure your big toe is cut off. You walk in circles. Or is that for other toes? Like your pinky toe? I can't remember.
He himself committed the murder in his sleep. As an experiment, he was locked in a cell with a gun containing blanks, and surely enough, in the middle of the night, he rose from the bed and began firing rounds at the jail guards. Robert managed to keep his career even after the murders, as doctors determined his stress and allegedly his untreated syphilis were the cause of his violent nighttime acts. Taking extra precaution, Robert moved to the countryside and was accompanied by medical personnel and guards to tend to him until his death in 1937. No one in Timothy Brueggemann's life suspected that the 51-year-old had suffered severe insomnia for years. However, several of his close friends eventually learned he was taking Ambien, a popular prescription sleep aid, the side effects of which resulted in Timothy crashing his pickup truck into his garage in his sleep. But the worst was yet to come. In the cold winter of 2009, Timothy had another sleepwalking episode. He wandered outside of his house barefoot in negative 20-degree weather, completely oblivious to the cold. He was found dead in the morning, wearing only his underwear and a fleece shirt, lying almost 200 yards away from his house. Ambien was heavily associated with sleepwalking spells, even to the point where people were shoplifting in their sleep. But Timothy also didn't follow the warning label and often would take his pills with alcohol. Police believe it was a deadly concoction of Ambien, alcohol, and sleepwalking that led to his death.
I think that's completely different from he was passing away in your bed without sleepwalking. Because the thing you do in your sleepwalk can depend on you be a good person or a bad person.
Ivy Cogden, a single mother from Carnegie, Australia, had a fierce love and overprotectiveness for her only child, 19-year-old Patricia. Ivy's unconscious fears over her daughter's safety manifested in incredibly vivid night terrors and sleepwalking episodes. While incredibly realistic for Ivy, the episodes were harmless at first. On the night of August 11th, 1950, Patricia mentioned she would possibly be working as a transport driver should the Korean Army attack Australia. That night, Ivy dreamed Korean soldiers invaded her home and were attacking Patricia. She picked up an axe and swung it down on her daughter's bed, thinking she was attacking a soldier. The next morning, she found out it hadn't been a dream at all. Patricia's head was fatally smashed in from the lethal blow, and authorities arrested Ivy to await trial. Ivy pled not guilty due to sleepwalking, and experts agreed, calling her a hysterical sleepwalker who was more susceptible to blackouts than most. The jury believed the devastated mother, and she...
Even if you sleepwalk, I still won't trust you. If you kill someone in a dream, or when you sleepwalk, I'm like, I don't trust you enough to allow you to be in my house. He could be lying the entire time.
She was acquitted on all charges, but the heartbreak seemed too much for her, and she died just 2 years later in a psychiatric hospital. Florida resident James Currens hoped to live out his retirement in peace despite his long history as a sleepwalker. But on a Monday night in 1998, the 77-year-old woke to find himself in the midst of a real-life nightmare. James fell asleep, but the next time he opened his eyes, he found himself chest deep in a pond, his feet suctioned to the muddy bottom. James then felt something brush against him in the water. An alligator, he soon realized. He'd fallen into an entire pond of them. Luckily, James sleepwalked with his cane still in hand, and he used it to keep the alligators at bay as he yelled for help. A neighbor who heard James' terrified screams called police. When authorities arrived, they used flashlights to scare away the alligators, just long enough to pull James out of the mud. Physically, James was unharmed, but his nights spent with the alligators likely haunted what little sleep he did have for his...
Alligators. If you live near alligators and you're a sleepwalker, lock your doors properly. Because you might start walking and you might go into a pond full of alligators. Then you're fucked.
remaining years. 44-year-old Vernon Sillick knew that keeping family close wasn't always easy. The taxi driver was estranged from his brothers and found out on April 7, 2008, one of them had died of a drug overdose. But Vernon had a good relationship with his parents, Faye and Robert Sillick, and they grieved together. There was no bad blood between them, but that was about to change. On the morning of April 9th, Vernon woke after a night of heavy drinking to find the bodies of his parents. Both had been kicked to death, and Vernon had blood on his steel-toed boots. He was arrested and told authorities he had a long history of sleepwalking and couldn't remember attacking his parents. Investigators refused to believe him as Robert and Faye's bodies were positioned after death, which didn't fit with the mindless, autonomous act of sleepwalking. Also, at the time of the murder, Vernon's blood alcohol level was
It's sketchy as fuck.
around 0.397.
If you're like Dexter, like cutting up bodies, putting in bags, I don't think when he's sleepwalking, you're not doing that. What about for Edivance though? I can't say a word. Edivance. No. Because when you're sleepwalking, you're sloppy as fuck. Like you might put your handprints on a bed, on a counter.
While friends heavily defended Vernon's sleepwalking story, the jury wasn't buying it and convicted him of 2 counts of willful murder, a life sentence with a minimum of 15 years. Vernon's friends felt a great injustice had been done, but several family members were satisfied with the conviction as they'd lost 2 loving, devoted grandparents to horrific violence. On August 17, 1943, the Kiger family was enjoying a quiet evening on their 20-acre farm in Boone County, Kentucky. Carl Kiger, the vice mayor of Covington and father of the family, locked up the house and put his 2 children to bed and fell asleep next to his wife, Jenny. Carl was comforted by the fact that should any intruder break in, he had 3 pistols to defend his family with. But it wasn't a stranger Carl had to fear. 15-year-old Joan had inherited her father's horrific night terrors and often walked in her sleep. That night she claimed she had vivid nightmares about exchanging gunfire with shadowy figures, but when she woke, the terror was real. Her 6-year-old brother, Jerry, and her father had been shot to death. Her mother, Jenny, was injured but still alive. Joan rushed to a neighbor for help, crying about how an intruder had shot and killed her brother and father. When authorities investigated the crime scene, however, they
It's mad that people can do that. Like, go into your house, shoot someone, and leave, and dip, without thinking it twice. It's mostly like impulse. My thought is just get a stake, a long stake, like a massive wooden pole, and tie them to it and just set on fire. I know that's fucking morbid as fuck, but I'll smile at gay.
found all 15 of the gunshots fired came from the Kiger's own guns. Joan and her mother stood trial for the murders, but both were ultimately acquitted of all charges, though there were family members that felt Joan was very capable of such a crime despite her age and believed she got away with murder. A loving, sleep-deprived father keeping a dark secret was a recipe for disaster in the case of 50-year-old Joseph Anthony Mitchell. He was attempting to stop his home from being foreclosed, all while trying to provide the best life he could for his 3 young children and their mother. But the stress weighed so heavily on him that he suffered horrible insomnia. Then, when he finally did sleep, his worst nightmares came true at his own hands. On the night of September 22, 2010, Joseph's daughter, 13-year-old Alexis, woke to see her father wearing a Halloween mask, strangling her brother, Devin. She sprinted to her mother for help and went to check on her younger brother, 4-year-old Blake, whom she found dead. He'd been strangled. Luckily, Devin survived the incident and Joseph was taken into custody. During the trial, the defense claimed Joseph was sleepwalking during the attack as the result of his non-REM parasomnia. But a psychologist testified that after multiple examinations, he found no mental reason Joseph could have been sleepwalking the night of the attacks. Prosecution even accused Joseph of planning the murders, but it wasn't enough to convict him. The jury delivered a unanimous not guilty verdict, but jurors felt they had no other choice. The judge would not allow for a lesser conviction of manslaughter, so it was first-degree murder or nothing. But while Joseph walked out of court a free man, he was homeless and financially ruined, and the new nightmare of day-to-day living was a crushing new reality.